Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the show that takes a huge amount of information, sometimes really complex stuff, and boils it down to the essentials for you.
Giving you that shortcut to getting informed.
Exactly. And today we're diving into something pretty intriguing. It's this idea of a sacred fire of transformation. Imagine like a spiritual energy that some people believe can actually take negative emotions, even things like karmic burdens, and transform them into higher consciousness.
It does sound quite fantastical when you put it like that.
Doesn't it? Yeah. What we're unpacking today is the violet flame of transmutation.
Right, a concept that's, well, pretty significant in Western esotericism, those mystical traditions outside the mainstream. And it's had a big impact on modern New Age spirituality.
And what really grabbed me is how it tries to connect the spiritual with something almost tangible, or at least explainable in a sort of quasi-scientific way.
Yeah, that's a key part of it.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really understand what this violet flame is supposed to be, where the idea comes from, how people actually claim to use it.
And also the bigger picture, right? The social, the psychological reasons why it's stuck around, why it appeals to people.
Exactly. We've looked at a whole range material on the violet flame, its origins, its beliefs, the practices, even the controversies surrounding it.
So by the end of this, you should have a really solid understanding of this, well, compelling and sometimes quite perplexing topic.
Okay, so where should we start? The core concept, maybe.
Yeah, let's start there. At its heart, it's really about spiritual alchemy. You know how traditional alchemy was supposedly about turning base metals like lead into gold?
Right.
Well, the violet flame takes that same principle, but applies it spiritually.
Okay, so instead of lead, you're talking about transmuting things like fear, anger, guilt.
Exactly. Resentment, what they call bad karma, all these base elements of the psyche or spirit.
And the idea is they get transformed into gold, which means
high frequency energies.
Yeah.
Things like love, peace, harmony, forgiveness, sometimes just referred to as light.
And it's linked to specific divine qualities too, isn't it? Like mercy, forgiveness.
Freedom and justice. Yes. And its purpose is, well, pretty broad. Everything from healing your own emotional stuff and dissolving karmic patterns.
All the way up to cleansing negativity on a global scale.
Yeah, raising collective consciousness, that kind of thing.
But like I mentioned, they don't just present it as a metaphor, right? They use language that sounds almost scientific. How do they explain the mechanics?
That's a really interesting aspect. They borrow from basic physics, or optics, really. The idea is that violet light has the highest frequency, the most energy in the visible light spectrum.
Okay, yeah, ROYGBV, violets at the end.
Right. So they take that scientific fact and kind of extrapolate it into the spiritual realm. The suggestion is that the spiritual violet flame, because it's violet, has the highest spiritual frequency and therefore the greatest power to change things at a really fundamental level, like down to the atomic level.
So the theory goes, negative energy or karmic gunk gets stuck in the space inside atoms.
Yeah, that's the idea, that this dense negative energy or karmic debris lodges itself in the empty space within atoms, and that lowers your overall vibration.
Okay.
And when you invoke the violet flame, its high frequency energy is supposed to penetrate right into that subatomic space. It creates an oscillation of vibration.
And it shakes loose the bad stuff.
Exactly. It dislodges the dense substance. And supposedly, this makes the electrons whirl faster, increasing their vibratory rate and essentially throwing off the impurities.
It's fascinating how they use that scientific sounding language. It's almost like a rhetorical strategy, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about lending a kind of empirical weight or modern legitimacy to what's fundamentally an esoteric concept, framing it as a spiritual technology.
Giving you a how-to for something mystical.
Precisely. It makes it seem more accessible, more understandable, maybe more controllable.
And speaking of reframing concepts, let's talk about karma, because this framework treats it quite differently than, say, traditional Eastern views.
It really does. In many Eastern traditions, karma is a complex moral law, cause and effect over lifetimes. Here, it gets recontextualized as something almost physical, energetic.
Like imprints or blockages in your aura.
Exactly. Tangible, energetic substance. And the violet flame is then presented as the tool, the solvent maybe, to dissolve these karmic imprints and neutralize the negative energy.
Offering karmic balance across lifetimes.
Yes. And the really powerful implication here for the practitioner is the huge sense of agency it offers.
Right. Instead of just being subject to your past karma.
You're given a direct method, a tool to actively clean your slate, so to speak. To purify your own spiritual record, that's incredibly empowering for people.
Okay, so we have a sense of what it is. Let's trace where it came from. The history is just as fascinating, starting with this really enigmatic figure, the Comte de Saint-Germain.
Ah, yes, Saint-Germain. He's a genuine historical mystery from the 18th century. A European nobleman, maybe? An alchemist, scientist, musician, diplomat. Spoke multiple languages fluently.
The Wonder Man of Europe, they called him.
That's him. He moved in royal circles, seemed ageless. Nobody really knew his origins. Very charismatic, very mysterious.
But his story takes a sharp turn after his supposed death, right? This is where history kind of blends into esoteric lore.
Absolutely. He gets incorporated into theosophy, not just as a historical figure, but as an ascended master.
Which means?
An enlightened being who's mastered the lessons of earthly life, escaped the cycle of reincarnation, and now acts as a kind of spiritual guide for humanity from, well, higher realms.
And he's not just any ascended master in this system.
No, he's given a very prominent role. He's designated the hierarch of the Aquarian Age, the spiritual leader for our current era, and the Chohan, or Lord of the Seventh Ray.
And the seventh ray is the violet flame.
Precisely. And to sort of bolster his spiritual credentials, they attribute previous incarnations to him too. Figures like Francis Bacon, even Merlin, the magician.
Wow. So he's positioned as the official keeper of the violet flame.
Yes, the one who held this knowledge and then gifted it or released it to humanity in the 20th century.
For a specific purpose.
To help humanity transmute its collective karma and basically usher in a new golden age. It's a pretty grand cosmic role.
Okay, so Saint-Germain is the source, metaphysically speaking. But how did this knowledge actually get out there? Who brought it to the public?
That really starts with a man named Guy W. Ballard. And this leads to the founding of the I Am activity.
Right. Tell us about Ballard.
So the story goes that in August 1930, Ballard, who was a mining engineer, was hiking on Mount Shasta in California.
Mount Shasta pops up a lot in these kinds of stories.
It certainly does, a place of perceived spiritual power. Anyway, Ballard claimed he encountered Saint-Germain there.
Physically?
Yes, physically. And over a series of encounters, Saint-Germain supposedly revealed to him profound spiritual truths, including the knowledge of the mighty I Am presence, the divine spark within, and the laws of life, including the use of the violet flame.
And this became the basis for the I Am activity?
Yes. He and his wife, Edna, founded the Saint-Germain Foundation in 1932. And the movement grew incredibly quickly in the 1930s.
Right in the middle of the Great Depression.
Exactly. By 1938, some estimates say they had up to 1 million followers. It clearly offered a message of hope, empowerment, divine connection.
Things people desperately needed during that time of economic hardship and uncertainty. It gave them a sense of control, maybe?
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Ballard codified the practice. He emphasized rhythmic spoken commands called decrees as the main way to invoke the flame.
We'll get more into decrees later.
Yeah. And he popularized visual aids, especially the chart of the magic presence, which depicts the divine self and protective light.
But the I Am movement faced some challenges, didn't it, after Ballard died?
It did. Ballard died in 1939. Afterwards, the movement faced mail fraud charges related to their fundraising and claims.
Which were overturned eventually.
Yes, the Supreme Court case United States v. Ballard in 1944 established that the sincerity of religious beliefs, not its factual truth, was the legal standard. But the legal battles plus IRS investigations definitely hurt the movement, and its membership declined quite sharply.
But the teachings themselves didn't just disappear. They continued to evolve, right?
Right. Other figures picked up the mantle. In the 1950s, Geraldine Innocent started the Bridge to Freedom, claiming to channel more detailed dictations from the masters, including Saint-Germain.
And then came the figures who arguably did the most to spread the violet flame globally. Mark and Elizabeth Clare Prophet.
Absolutely. They founded the Summit Lighthouse in 1958, building on the foundations laid by Theosophy and the I Am activity.
Elizabeth Clare Prophet became particularly prominent.
Extremely. Mark was the initial messenger, but Elizabeth was a very charismatic co-messenger. After Mark's death in 1973, she took sole leadership, renaming the organization the Church Universal and Triumphant, or CUT, in 1974.
And CUT really took the violet flame mainstream, in a New Age sense.
On an unprecedented scale, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, often called Guru Ma by followers, was incredibly prolific. Books like Violet Flame to Heal Body, Mind, and Soul, Saint-Germain, on alchemy, countless audio recordings of lectures and decrees, worldwide tours.
She really became the face of the violet flame for a whole generation.
For many, yes. She became the definitive authority. And the influence persists. There are contemporary offshoots of CET, And the violet flame concept itself has permeated broadly into general New Age culture.
Even, as you mentioned, getting picked up by some pretty fringe figures like that Queen of Canada person, Romana Didulo, using decrees for political ends.
Yeah, it shows how these ideas can spread and be adapted, sometimes in quite concerning ways.
Okay, so that's the lineage. Now let's get practical. How do people actually use this flame? You mentioned decrees.
Right, the science of the spoken word, as they call it. This is central. And decrees are different from typical prayer.
How so?
Prayer is often supplicatory, asking for help. Decrees are framed as commands, as rhythmic, repetitive, vocalized statements of intent and power.
Using the I am phrase.
Yes, that's key.
Yeah.
The power is believed to derive from stating, I am, because that connects you directly to your own mighty I am presence, your individual spark of God. It's seen as invoking God's power through you.
So examples would be like?
Short ones like, I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. Or longer, more elaborate ones, like the very common decree that starts, I am the violet flame, in action, in me now, and goes on to specify purification of thought, feeling, karma, etc.
And the rhythm and speed are important.
Crucial. There's a unique emphasis on this. Practitioners are often encouraged to increase the tempo as they decree.
Why? What's the thinking there?
The belief is that the faster rhythm raises your vibration more effectively, making the flame more potent. Elizabeth Clare Prophet's recorded decrees could become incredibly fast, almost like a hypnotic chant.
Which some people found kind of intense, or freaky, as the source material put it.
Yes, it could be quite jarring to outsiders. But for practitioners, this speed and rhythm are part of the technique.
It sounds like it could definitely alter your state of mind, induce a kind of trance, maybe.
That seems to be a big part of the psychospiritual function, yes. The rapid rhythmic vocalization, often done for extended periods, can lead to altered states of consciousness.
Like feeling lightheaded, or emotional release.
Exactly. People report feelings of lightheadedness, catharsis, sometimes ecstatic states, even perceived physical sensations like heat or tingling.
And these subjective experiences would then serve as confirmation, as proof that it's working.
Precisely. These powerful internal experiences become evidence for the believer that the flame is real and the practice is effective. It reinforces the belief system.
And it's not just for personal use, right? They use decrees collectively.
Oh, yes. There's a strong belief that group decreeing amplifies the power significantly. And they often direct this collective energy towards global issues.
Like what? World peace, political situations.
All of the above. Planetary negativity, specific conflicts, environmental issues, even things like the COVID-19 pandemic groups would gather, sometimes virtually, to decree for protection or resolution.
Which must give followers a real sense of purpose, of agency, like they're actively doing something constructive about world problems.
Absolutely. It combats feelings of helplessness. You feel like you're part of a spiritual force making a difference.
Okay, so decrees are the vocal part. What about the mental part, visualization?
Visualization is seen as essential to empower the decrees. You're taught that the clearer and more focused your mental image, the more effective the flame will be.
So what's the core visualization?
Typically, it involves seeing a brilliant, blazing violet flame. Sometimes it starts above your head, then descends to completely envelop your body and your aura.
And it's not just surrounding you, but going through you.
Yes, permeating every cell, every atom, your mind, your emotions, burning away negativity, dissolving blockages, cleansing everything it touches.
Is there a kind of standard meditation process for this?
There often is, yeah. It usually starts with preparation. Find a quiet space, relax, maybe some deep breathing to center yourself. Standard meditation prep, right? Then comes invocation and protection. You might visualize what they call a tube of light, like an impenetrable cylinder of white light coming down from your I am presence, sealing you off from negative influences. You state your intention, make the call for the violet flame.
And then you visualize the flame itself.
Yes, imagining it appearing, descending, engulfing you. You might consciously direct it to specific areas, maybe a part of your body that needs healing, or your heart chakra for emotional issues, or just generally for karmic cleansing.
And this is where you combine it with the decrees.
Exactly. The ideal is to hold the vivid visualization while rhythmically chanting the decrees. That's seen as the most powerful application.
And then how do you finish?
Usually with the closing phase. Visualizing the flame receding, maybe back to its source, expressing gratitude to Saint Germain and the Ascended Masters, and then grounding your energy, feeling, cleansed, balanced, restored.
Do people use props or aids?
Sometimes, yes. Things associated with the color violet are common: amethyst crystals, purple candles. Even just looking at images of violet light or flowers can be used to help focus the visualization. It's quite a multisensory practice in many ways.
Okay, let's zoom out again. Look at the bigger picture. When we talk about groups like the I Am activity or the Church Universal and Triumphant, CUT, scholars categorize them as new religious movements, or NRMs.
Right, and it's important to remember that NRM is a neutral academic term. It just means a religious or spiritual group that's emerged relatively recently, often distinct from established traditions.
And CUT, founded by the prophets, is a really interesting case study within that category.
Definitely. Its theology was very syncretic. It pulled together elements from many sources.
Like theosophy, the I Am teachings.
Judeo-Christianity, particularly the Book of Revelation, elements of Eastern religions like karma and reincarnation, and a very strong layer of American patriotism.
And their social and political views were quite defined, too.
Yes, generally conservative morality, condemning abortion, advocating traditional family structures, and politically very staunchly right-wing and anti-communist.
They saw communism, socialism, even left-wing politics generally, as manifestations of evil.
Essentially, yes. Framed as part of a global conspiracy by what they called dark forces or fallen ones. Their cosmology included battles against these forces, which sometimes even involved malevolent extraterrestrials and an international capitalist communist conspiracy. It got pretty complex.
This sounds like it could lead to some intense situations, and it did, particularly in the late 1980s with the apocalyptic prophecies.
That's right. Elizabeth Clare Prophet began issuing increasingly urgent prophecies about an imminent Soviet nuclear attack on the United States.
Which led to the shelter cycle.
Yes. Thousands of followers were urged to relocate, primarily to Montana near the church's headquarters. They built underground fallout shelters, stockpiled food, water, supplies, and weapons.
That must have attracted a lot of media attention and controversy.
Immense controversy. The period Prophet designated as the most likely time for the attack was the spring of 1990.
And nothing happened.
Nothing happened. The failed prophecy led to widespread public ridicule. She was even awarded an Ig Nobel Peace Prize for scaring people into believing the world would end. More seriously, it caused a huge internal crisis for CUT.
People left.
Significant numbers. Estimates suggest about a third of the membership. And there were legal repercussions too. Ex-members came forward with accounts describing CUT as a high-demand, high-control group, making accusations of mind control tactics and financial exploitation.
It highlights that potential for ideological escalation, doesn't it? How something starting as a personal tool, the flame, can become framed as a weapon in a cosmic war against perceived enemies.
Exactly. From personal development to spiritual warfare. That's a significant shift.
Now, stepping back from CUT specifically, how does the violet flame practice compare to other spiritual approaches to purification or forgiveness? Proponents sometimes link it to Christianity, right?
They do. They often connect the flame's qualities of mercy and forgiveness to Jesus and Christian concepts of grace. Some describe it as an aspect of the Holy Spirit's action.
But is it really the same?
Well, there's a pretty fundamental difference in emphasis. Christian grace is generally understood as an unmerited gift from God, based on faith and repentance. It's fundamentally relational.
Whereas the violet flame
is presented much more as a tool, a force, an energy that the practitioner actively wields or directs. Remember Elizabeth Clare Prophet calling it a powerful detergent or a cosmic eraser?
Yeah.
That frames it more like an energetic transaction you perform, rather than a relational act of seeking and receiving pardon from a personal God.
Okay, what about comparisons with Eastern practices, like Buddhist purification?
There are some surface similarities, especially with practices like Vajrasattva meditation in Tibetan Buddhism, which uses mantra and visualization to purify negative karma.
But deeper down.
The philosophical and psychological underpinnings are quite different. As we said, the violet flame is often depicted as an external power you invoke upon yourself. The flame does the work.
Whereas Vajrasattva
relies heavily on the practitioner's internal state. It requires what are called the four powers. 1, reliance on the enlightened beings. 2, genuine regret for past harmful actions. 3, the remedy, the practice itself, like mantra recitation. And crucially, 4, resolve not to repeat those actions.
So the violet flame practice, as commonly taught, doesn't necessarily have that built-in ethical framework of regret and resolve.
Generally, no. Not in the same mandatory structured way. The focus is more on the energetic cleansing. It simplifies karma into energetic debris that needs removing.
Which is different from the Buddhist view of karma as complex volitional action tied to intent?
Yes, Buddhism generally has a more nuanced psychological understanding of karma. So ultimately, the violet flame really emerges as this kind of Western New Age synthesis.
Taking bits from here and there.
Exactly, and prioritizing things like immediacy, personal power, getting results quickly. It offers a kind of user-friendly approach to very complex spiritual problems like karma and suffering.
Which obviously appeals to a modern, often individualistic audience looking for spiritual tools they can control and see effects from relatively fast.
That seems to be a large part of its enduring appeal.
Okay, so we've covered the what, where, how, and the comparative context. What about scientific pushback? We touched on the quasi-scientific language, but is there any empirical basis for the claims?
From a strictly scientific perspective?
Yeah.
No. The claims about the flame operating on a physical, atomic level, changing vibrations, dissolving energy patterns, these are unsubstantiated. There's simply no evidence in physics or biology to support them.
So the idea that violet light's high frequency translates to high spiritual power is...
It's what philosophers might call a category error. It's applying principles from one domain, physics, to another, metaphysics or spirituality, where they don't necessarily fit or have measurable meaning. The violet flame belongs to the realm of belief, faith, subjective experience.
Right. But that subjective experience is clearly very real and often very positive for practitioners. How do we understand that? Why do people report feeling genuinely better, healed, empowered?
And that's a crucial point. Just because there's no scientific validation for the mechanism described doesn't mean the effects aren't real psychological phenomena.
Okay, so what psychological mechanisms might be at play?
Several, most likely working together. First, there's the placebo effect, or maybe better termed, the power of expectation. If you strongly believe this practice will heal or empower you, your mind and body are primed to experience positive outcomes. Belief itself is powerful.
Makes sense. What else?
Cognitive reframing. The practice inherently shifts your perspective. Instead of feeling like a passive victim of circumstance or past karma, you become an active agent, someone wielding a powerful tool for change. This shift to an internal locus of control is known to be very therapeutic.
Taking charge, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Also, the practice itself incorporates elements of meditation and mindfulness. Focused attention, rhythmic breathing, visualization. These are techniques known to reduce stress, calm the nervous system, and improve emotional regulation.
So some benefits might come just from the act of doing the practice, regardless of the specific belief attached.
Very likely. And don't underestimate the power of catharsis. The vocal, rhythmic decreeing, especially done intensely, can be a powerful way to release pent-up emotional energy, frustration, anger, grief. People often report feeling lighter afterwards.
Like an emotional pressure valve releasing.
Something like that. And finally, perhaps most importantly, the whole violet flame framework provides a compelling narrative.
A story that makes sense of things.
Yes. It offers an explanation for suffering, negative energy, karma, the source of power, the flame, the I am presence, and a clear path forward, decreeing, visualization. Having a coherent worldview that gives meaning and purpose is profoundly beneficial for psychological well-being.
So wrapping this all up, what's the main takeaway for you, the listener?
Well, the violet flame of transmutation is clearly this complex phenomenon, what its proponents call a spiritual technology. It's a fascinating mix of Eastern ideas about karma and energy, blended with Western New Thought emphasis on mind power and divine potential within.
And it speaks to some deep human needs, doesn't it? The need for explanation, for resolution of suffering, for a sense of empowerment and control in a world that often feels chaotic.
Definitely. And the core paradox we see is this stark contrast. On one hand, you have countless individuals reporting profound personal healing and transformation through the practice.
And on the other hand, you have the historical controversies, the skepticism about its claims, the concerns raised about the groups that promoted it most heavily.
It really highlights the complex, sometimes contentious nature of new religious movements and the diverse ways people seek meaning, power, and transcendence.
So as we finish this deep dive, here's something to think about. If that profound sense of healing and agency reported by violet flame practitioners can be largely understood through known psychological mechanisms, placebo, reframing, meditation, catharsis, narrative,
then what might this suggest about our own innate human capacity for self-healing and transformation? Regardless of the specific spiritual framework, the specific flame we choose to engage with.
Could it be that deeper wells of power lie within our own minds, our own psyches, waiting to be accessed through focused intention, belief, and practice, whatever form that takes?
Something to ponder.